Okay, so since I can't be there in person, I did want to do a screencast video of my PowerPoint so that I could kind of give my presentation without being there. So this is going to be that. I decided to do the Jewel Collins Smith Museum of Fine Art for my field trip. And I decided to do standard 15 for grade 6 science, which states analyze evidence to explain how changes in human populations, per capita consumption of natural resources, and other human activities affects Earth's systems. So I did create some videos while I was there, and links are here. I can't actually get that recording audio through Screencast. I don't have that capability. So if Dr. Berg wants to press it or y'all want to press it later and look through those, they're open to the public as long as you use this link. The one thing that I did want to point out that was really interesting was the historical plaque that is posted up outside. Let me move my face a little bit. You wouldn't really notice it unless you go out of the patio area, which I have pictures of in the slideshow, and walk down the little walking path. And it gives you just a rundown of kind of how this museum all started. And it was started in 1946 at the beginning of the Cold War. And the purpose of it was diplomatic initiative called Advancing American Art. And it was going to be used to demonstrate the ascendancy of contemporary American art while promoting the freedom of expression that a democracy allows. So essentially, it was going to be using art to help with expressionism during the war times. And following the collection's return from abroad, it was auctioned off to a surplus property, and related groups of watercolors were also auctioned off. And then Auburn University, which then was known as the Alabama Polytechnic Institute, which I did not know, was a fun fact for me, it acquired 36 of the 117 paintings of the sale. So the focus of the field trip, I wanted to focus on the exhibit Radical Naturalism by Manon Beller. The other portion of this exhibit was focused on African American slave trades, and so they had a lot of slave documents and artifacts from there, which was a really neat portion of the exhibit this time. And this museum will actually rotate out their exhibits regularly. So this could be a multi-trip exhibit or museum for you and your students, because I know that the other section where the slave trade information would be great for history or social studies. But I wanted to focus on the naturalism portion because it did tie into my standard. And so this was just the light wording here that you couldn't read very well. I wanted to copy it for you. And this exhibit allowed for the people coming through to use their senses. It wasn't just auditory, it wasn't just smell, it wasn't just being able to see things. You could touch things, you could smell things, you could hear things. Those are the main three: touch, smell, and hear. So that was the main things she focused on. And she also pulled in other artists, John James Audubon and Warrington Colescott, as well as the Auburn Museum of Natural History to help with her exhibit. And she wanted to focus on the multisensory bodies of work, and she wanted to explore concern with landscapes lost to the effects of time, global warming, or urban sprawl. So one of the first exhibits that I had access to interact with was the smell portion. And so this one was actually the set of jars that held magnolia flower and honey extractions. And so what you would do is you would take the little lid off, and up under it was this wooden base with holes in it, which kind of helped the smell come out from up under. And the glass was the dome that helped trap it in, so when you opened it up, you could smell what extraction was in there. It was very beautiful and very strong smelling, despite the fact that other people have come through and also lifted the jars up, which was really interesting to me. The next one that I got a chance to interact with was a project called Golden Waste, which was the extraction of water, and when you opened it up, it had a very, very distinct smell, and I can't really describe it to you. It'd be something that you'd really have to go and experience for yourself. But it was something that you could open up similar to a shadow box, and you could smell the fragrance that came through, and you could actually touch the golden waste where it's written on. You could touch that area, and you could actually have the scent on your fingers as well after you touched it. The other one was another water-based one. It was called the Land of Water, and it was another water extraction, and same situation where you could go and you could open it, you could smell it, you could touch it, things of that nature. So it did definitely get the multi-sensory effect. This one I wanted to add to the smell section because these birds, unlike other birds, don't use sight to hunt or anything. They rely on their smell to actually be able to hunt and be able to move around and things of that nature. So their sense of smell is facilitated by a unique tube-shaped nose, and it adds in the recognition of food and oceanic navigation. And there's actually another short video here that I was able to get of the bird that they had on display. It was stuffed, obviously, but you can see the shape of the bill and the shape of the nose and all of that. The sensory sound exhibits are something that you will have to listen to. I got 2 videos specifically from one of the portions of the exhibit, and it's a 14-minute sound section, and I got 2 small clips of it, and it sounds what I would assume a cave would sound like, where there's water dripping down in like an abandoned cave, and so you can hear the echoes and you can hear the water droplets, and it was very calming almost. And then the other one down here, in the first room you walk into for this exhibit, there's an intercom going on, and at first I didn't realize what it was, but it's actually talking you through this exhibit and explaining some more information about it, and just talking you through everything that you're seeing. And so you get that auditory along with the visual aspect in that little room where students, if they sat there and they just listened, they could take notes, they could get information about the exhibit, and then they could hear what they're saying and read it at the same time for those students who aren't just auditory or aren't just sight-based learners. And so that video will give you a span of the room as well as the auditory speaker podcast, essentially. The next one I have is, flipped over, back, is the actual art in that room. This is the art that she was able to pull from other artists. And so you have 2 depictions here. One of them is a hand-colored lithograph, and it depicts the Bachman's oyster catcher, and it's from 1842. The other one is another hand-colored lithograph, but it is of woodpeckers. So it's the ivory-billed woodpecker. Outside of this little room, which I thought was interesting, was Earth, Dirt, Soil, and Land Altar, is what it was called. It was titled Alabama Railroad Ties and Alabama Red Soil and Museum Glass. And so this is another thing that you could see. It was similar to like the sand art that people make around beach areas, and you can see the little mountain peaks and things of that nature. This was a smaller exhibit, and it obviously depicts 7 photos here of cyanotypes on paper. And this is in the site portion, I believe, but I moved the site portion. Yeah, so this is the site portion. Oh, this is the one I missed. So this was actually really cool, and I have examples here. This photo was actually available for anyone walking through the exhibit to pick up their own copy and take with them. And so on the back of this, it gives you some more information, and it states, "This interview and smell extraction was conducted during my residency at a studio in the woods, a residency program just outside of New Orleans in 2019. This research residency allowed me to develop and continue an ongoing body of work that I began in fall 2017 and named Golden Waste. I focused on the smells and olfactory memory of places in and around New Orleans by extracting smells from strategically chosen historical areas affected by coastal erosion, natural flora and fauna, water and soil extraction, as well as smells from inside people's homes and sentimental objects belonging to local residents. So this whole multi-sensory exhibit ties into her research, and it gives you that information on the back of these, which I thought would be interesting for students to be able to pick up and take with them. They have an actual piece of the art that was in the exhibit. Obviously, it's a copy, and they have information about the exhibit and what it depicted. So they have something that they could use for their end activities and just as an experience in general. And it was duplicated on another art piece from in there, and that is this art piece, which we will actually see again. This particular bird was a Carolina parakeet, and it died in captivity in 1918, and it is actually extinct now. It was officially declared in 1939 and was thought to have been caused by a variety of factors that include habitat destruction, and the plume bloom, where feathers were super in fashion, and so they would go and gather up all these birds, and they would just pluck them, and it would cause for birth rates to go down. It would cause for deaths of these birds, and eventually, as this one, as we can see, some of the extinction of some of these birds. And one thing that you could tie into younger students that they might relate to is actually the movie Rio, because that movie is about trying to prevent the extinction of some of these birds. And that was a blue macaw in that movie. That's the same concept. So if you wanted to tie in something that they're more related to or that they might enjoy more, you could tie that in, just get clips from the movie, explain the situation, and this is a real life example in this exhibit. This photo at the top left is the one that I showed on the other sheet of paper. We went through that one. Okay, and this was the other little bit larger area of photos, and this is certain specimens. So you have a water hyacinth, you have a giant Sylvania, you have a Chinese tallow, a water thyme, and a yellow iris. And so those are all here, and you can get really up close and look at the details in those. And then you have this one as well, which is ferrofluid on glass. And so you see the different effects there. This is actually the outside pond area of the exhibit. So outside the main area, you can go into the back, which is technically the front if you're from the road. And you see this beautiful pond in the little patio area right here. And I figured, which is in the other YouTube clip, we could come out here after the exhibit and we could eat lunch. We could go over some questions that they still had, some things that they learned. And in the document that I sent Dr. Berg, the paper document of the activities, I will actually pull that up for us in a minute. I'll go into detail of what else I would like to do at the end of these exhibits. So obviously we're tying into the standard. My objectives were they'd be able to connect previous knowledge to an exhibit in the museum, which would have been the extreme naturalist exhibit, and they were going to write a paper at the end. So pre-trip, obviously we have to learn about things that could affect Earth, things that we do that could cause extinction, things of that nature, and that's all here. Trip activities, scavenger hunts while we're there, having a chaperone take pictures and videos while we're there, similar to how I have this presentation done. And they have an exit slip at the end on that little patio area is what I want us to do. And then the post-trip activities is they would write a paper tying in what they learned prior to one of their favorite exhibits, and then write their paper on it, and obviously I have my rubric attached as well. But I thought that this could be a really neat one, especially because, like I said, they rotate out their exhibits so often that you could come more than once and use it for science, you could come more than once and use it for history or social studies, and I'm sure at some point you could even use a math section as well.